When I was 15 years old, I was eager to find a summer job. Most of my friends had already secured positions, but no one would hire me because of my age. I was determined to earn some money, so I turned to Craigslist, hoping to find some under-the-table work. After searching for a while, I found an ad titled "House Cleaning Services Needed, $10 an hour." The ad included a couple of pictures, one of the outside of a modest house and another showing a living room. The house was located in a neighboring town, and the pay seemed reasonable, so I decided to reach out. The only way to contact the person was through email, so I sent a message explaining that I was 15 years old but eager to work. To my surprise, the man responded almost immediately. He introduced himself as Mr. Johnson and detailed his work schedule, asking if I could come during specific hours. I agreed right away, eager to start making some money. He then asked if I had a way to get to this house each day. I hadn't thought about transportation, so when Mr. Johnson offered to pick me up and drop me off each day, I accepted without hesitation. At the time, it seemed like a generous offer. On Monday morning, Mr. Johnson arrived as promised, driving a black sedan. He was a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, and he handed me the house key before driving off, leaving me to clean the house on my own. I found it a bit odd that he trusted me, a teenager he had never met, to be in his home unsupervised. But the house wasn't particularly messy, just some clothes to fold, dishes to wash, and carpets to vacuum. The only thing that stood out was the heat. It was stifling inside, much hotter than outside. The windows were all sealed shut, and I didn't want to turn on the air conditioning without asking. This routine continued for about 2 weeks. Each day, Mr. Johnson would pick me up, drop me off at his house, and return several hours later to pay me. He was always polite, and my parents were okay with it since I was making money. Everything seemed fine until one Friday night when I woke up feeling incredibly thirsty. As I walked to the kitchen for a glass of water, I glanced out my bedroom window and froze. There was someone standing outside, staring directly into my room. I screamed, and my parents came running, but by the time they reached my room, the person outside had already fled. I was shaken, but I convinced myself it was just a random creep and tried to forget about it. The next time I went to Mr. Johnson's house, the temperature was unbearable, over 100 degrees outside and even hotter inside. I asked him if I could turn on the air conditioning, but he told me it was broken. Then, in a tone that made my skin crawl, he suggested I take off some layers if I got too hot. I laughed it off, thinking he was joking, but the look on his face told me he was serious. I felt uncomfortable but tried to focus on my work. The following day, Mr. Johnson mentioned that he had the day off and would be staying home to help me clean. I felt uneasy but didn't say anything. Once we arrived, I started my usual tasks, but this time Mr. Johnson seemed to be following me into every room. It was unsettling. At one point, I needed to use the bathroom, so I quickly made my way upstairs, hoping to get a moment alone. Inside the bathroom, I made a shocking discovery. Hidden in the corner of the room was a small camera, just barely visible. My heart raced as I scanned the room for more, and sure enough, I found another camera in the opposite corner. Panic set in, and I started searching the entire bathroom. When I opened the cabinet under the sink, I found something even more disturbing: several VHS tapes, each labeled with a sticky note bearing someone's name. The tape on the top had my name on it. I felt sick to my stomach. I knew I had to get out of that house, but I needed to do it without alerting Mr. Johnson. Just then, he knocked on the bathroom door, asking if everything was okay. I quickly composed myself and told him I wasn't feeling well and asked if he could take me home. He agreed, but I could tell something was off. The first part of the car ride was silent. I tried to remain calm, but I noticed that we were heading in the wrong direction, away from my house. I finally gathered the courage to ask, "Where are we going?" Mr. Johnson's expression darkened. "What were you doing in the bathroom?" he asked, his voice tense. I didn't answer, my heart pounding in my chest. He asked again, this time more forcefully. We stopped at a traffic light, and in a moment of pure panic, I unlocked the car door and bolted, running as fast as I could until I was out of sight. I called my mom, crying and begging her to pick me up. She arrived quickly, and I told her everything. We went straight to the police. When the police searched Mr. Johnson's house, They found the tapes hidden under the sink. Some of the tapes contained disturbing footage. The police arrested Mr. Johnson, and he was charged with multiple crimes. I'm just thankful I trusted my instincts and got out when I did. I don't know what would have happened if I had stayed in that car, but I'm certain it wouldn't have been good. A few months ago, my roommate and I decided we needed a new couch. After searching through Craigslist, I found a listing for a black leather couch that was in excellent condition for only $200. It seemed like an incredible deal, and I quickly reached out to the seller. The seller responded, and we arranged for me to come by and check out the couch. My roommate was working late, so I had to go alone. The address was a bit out of town, but I didn't think much of it as I drove through rural roads. As I got closer, the surroundings became more isolated, and I began to feel uneasy. When I arrived at the house, I saw that it was small, wooden, and had an eerie appearance. The house was surrounded by trees, which only added to the unsettling atmosphere. I knocked on the front door, but no one answered. After a few moments, I heard footsteps inside, followed by a muffled voice saying, "Are you here for the couch?" The voice sounded rushed, almost nervous. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The person on the other side of the door instructed me to go around to the back of the house, where the couch was supposedly located. Something about the situation didn't feel right, but I brushed it off and walked around to the back. What I saw made my heart race. 4 men dressed in dark robes stood in a semicircle, their hands clasped together. In front of them was a pit covered by a hatch with a chain across it. The same voice called out again, "Where's your friend?" I didn't wait to find out what was going on. I turned and ran as fast as I could, my adrenaline pumping as I frantically started my car. I glanced in the rearview mirror just in time to see the front door of the house open, but I didn't stick around to see who or what was coming out. I floored it and didn't stop until I was far away from that house. To this day, I'm disturbed by what happened. I had never mentioned having a friend or roommate in my emails to the seller. How did they know? What were they planning? I'll never know, but I'm grateful I got out of there when I did. If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. I was about 12 years old when I needed some storage for all the craft supplies I had received for Christmas. The storage options at the store were too expensive, so my older sister and I decided to check Craigslist for something more affordable. We found a listing for a large storage tote being sold for just $10. It seemed like a great deal, so we contacted the seller. The seller responded quickly and suggested we meet at a nearby store. However, he later asked if we could meet at our home instead. I lived in an apartment, so I insisted that we meet at the store as originally planned. The seller agreed, but said he could only meet late in the evening. I felt uneasy about meeting someone so late, but I figured it would be fine since the store was just a short walk away. When I arrived at the store, I saw an old car parked in the lot, and the man inside waved at me. He got out and introduced himself, but when I asked about the storage tote, he claimed he had forgotten it at home and offered to drive me back to get it. I politely declined, saying that I couldn't go with him, but he became insistent, saying he would give me the tote for free if I came with him. My gut told me something was very wrong, so I turned and quickly walked away. As I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I kept looking over my shoulder, but I didn't see anyone. When I got home, I locked the doors and windows, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. However, that relief was short-lived. Later that night, I heard footsteps outside my apartment door. I held my breath as I listened, praying that whoever it was would go away. Then, a voice called out from the other side of the door. I brought the tote. "Come get it." My heart pounded in my chest as I realized it was the same man from earlier. I stayed completely silent, hoping he would leave. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps finally retreated, and I heard the sound of the elevator doors closing. The next morning, I told my sister everything that had happened. She was furious and called the police to report the incident. They took down our statement and promised to investigate, but I never heard anything more about it. We moved to a new apartment shortly after, and I've never used Craigslist again. The experience left me shaken, but it also taught me to trust my instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. A couple of years ago, I decided it was time to upgrade my car. I had been driving my grandfather's old sedan for years, and I wanted something newer and sportier. After searching online, I found a listing on Craigslist for a Mustang in excellent condition at a price that seemed too good to be true. I contacted the seller, who responded quickly and gave me an address to come check out the car. The drive was long, taking me far from the city into more rural areas. As I got closer, I began to feel uneasy. The area was remote, and the houses were few and far between. When I arrived at the address, I was surprised to see an old, run-down house instead of the well-kept home I had expected. The house looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds and peeling paint. There was no sign of the Mustang anywhere. I sat in my car for a few minutes, debating whether to go knock on the door. Just as I was about to leave, the front door opened and a man stepped out. He waved at me with a friendly smile, and I reluctantly got out of my car. The man introduced himself and led me towards the garage, saying the car was inside. As we walked, I noticed something strange. There were no other cars in sight, not even in the garage. My unease grew, but I followed him inside. The garage was empty, and I turned to ask where the car was. But before I could say anything, the man's demeanor changed. He blocked the exit, and I realized with horror that this was a setup. I didn't wait to find out what he had planned. I pushed past him and ran for my car. The man shouted after me, but I didn't stop. I jumped into my car and sped off, my heart racing. I didn't stop driving until I was back in familiar territory. Shaken, I called the police and reported what had happened. They took my statement and promised to look into it, but I never heard back. That experience was enough to make me wary of online deals. I was lucky to get away unharmed, but I know not everyone is so fortunate. My advice to anyone using Craigslist or similar sites is to be cautious. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.